survive this pandemic without being on easy street, sir.
What do you mean?
You need to. Easy street is the only way forward, sir.
Okay, so like I believe that like white privilege is real. Is there anybody who like doesn't believe that?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by white privilege?
Dude. White privilege is irrelevant without easy street.
Because obviously
there exist portions of privilege that white people get, and a lot of white people say that white privilege is not real.
What is
because they think that it's this thing that like SJWs just made up.
The black man
pisses people off.
You mean like driving while black?
But are you saying that's specific just to the white groups, or like white people? Because that would just be a trivial claim, right? Because there could be privilege across all races.
The brown and black man wants you dead if you are white, and he wants me dead.
That's why they're really looking for white people.
They want you dead. They want you wiped out. They want you brown.
Like privilege is just conditional, right?
They don't want you white.
So privilege is, I think, the identification of
the black man wants you dead.
No. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting word. I've actually done a lot of reading in like a Robin DiAngelo, a couple of more modern and popular critical scholars and stuff like that here and there. Yeah, the definition's a little toxic in my opinion. But
what do you mean?
Well, okay, so concepts like so white privilege exists, right? And then there's also different terms like oh, here's a fun one, white fragility. Which basically means white fragility. Robin DiAngelo, who's a critical scholar, came up with that. It means that so if the reaction that white people get to the revelation of their privilege is to throw a bunch of defense mechanisms, and so if you say if you get defensive, if you don't accept the premise, if you have any questions about it, actually that's just your white privilege manifesting. And because you're fragile, you can't take it. So that's what that is.
What if the contrary occurs? Would that still be a white privilege
well, that's
manifesting?
So no, that's real though. But
no, that's ridiculous. That's
no. I'm saying that concept exists. I'm not saying I don't.
No, wrong.
No, but like the idea is someone could just react in the a contrastive manner to the way you just highlighted them reacting, and people would still say that's highlighting white privilege. So it's sort of like
well, sure, you either do that or you commit microaggressions, which is basically things that make people uncomfortable.
So hold on, but I'm curious. Is there anybody who believes that white privilege is not real?
Well, what does white privilege mean to you?
What do you mean? What does it mean to me?
Like, are you saying?
What do you? Exactly
are you saying that amongst the white people it's exaggerated?
I explained
to
it.
other groups?
Okay, I explained it. So I said that white privilege is like an instance of where a white person has I would say like an advantage over people who are not white.
In what situation, where, and when? Because having an advantage.
But the question is, do you believe that this is real or not?
I don't accept the category of white privilege. I don't.
Okay, so you don't like the idea of white privilege.
Well, I think the category is kind of strange because you can have any privilege is one of those the way that that term is actually identified and named, especially the words white privilege. White referring to not just an ethnic background, but a social concept. Social construction of racial identity and white.
I don't know if white is a social construct. There's actual genetic.
It is
real. No, it's
no.
real genetic.
Because you know why?
No,
white is a social construct.
No. Here's the thing. Like to be white, you have to have a certain type of DNA that's in your body in order to be white. So like there's only 3 like actual races where it's not a social construct, where it is an actual like DNA. It's a genetic thing. It has nothing to do.
That is
okay.
Not true.
All right. So then do you think? Hold on. So do you? Do you think that like let's say if two black people had sex, that it's possible that a white baby comes out?
No, I'm not saying that.
No, because there's a genetic component involved
No,
in
no,
it.
no.
That's
That
what I'm saying.
had that situation has happened.
So then what I'm saying is
Yeah,
that
like, I
the
guess if there's, like, a
association with-
genetic-
Yo, we're gonna let Ellipsis respond. He's been trying for a while.
Go ahead.
the arbitrary association with skin color and ethnic makeup or your genetic heritage, again, is arbitrary. And the
No, it's
category
not.
white, yeah, it is. You know why?
Why?
Because white people, quote unquote, or in the United States, being a social construct, collective. This is from the literature. Collectively constructed the concept of white in order to establish white dominance, right? Using an arbitrary identifier of light skin as superior, right? That's the claim for it.
I'm not saying white skin is superior, but I am saying that there is a genetic component to it.
Dude, that's not.
Sure, but
So
that's
if
not
there
my
is a
distinction.
genetic,
Before we
so there, if
continue,
okay, so if there is a genetic component,
What
You're
I'm
not
saying is that what
Ellipsis, hold
Go
on.
ahead, go ahead.
The entire thing is that we're not bringing in any new information. You're acting like these two things are mutually exclusive. Absolutely, there's a genetic component when it comes to basically what categorizes in terms of race. However, that is not in any way to it being mutually exclusive to being a social construct, because literally every single ontological category, from fucking color of the sun to basically the sun itself, to a chair, to a table, to a fucking building, to laws, are all social constructs.
So
Every
propositions are.
all right,
like-
okay, hold on. Here's the thing. So like, the definition of the color is is a social construct. However, the color itself is not a social construct. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example as to why. So like, when you have like a red ball, for example, if you will notice that it is red based on your eyes, and the reason why is because there's a certain amount of photons that bounce more back red photons towards you as opposed to the other. There's an actual physical. No, the point is there's a physical property to it. It has nothing to do with a social construct.
Okay, so allow me to.
I'd like to just.
And we're not
I'd
even
just
talking
like to-
about the actual
Let me
thing
make
right
it
now.
up.
We're not
I'd
even
just
talking
like
about
to
that.
add this on real quick because it's easy end. The entire thing is that when it comes to color, where you actually say this amount of basically wavelength of the photon is red and this amount isn't,
Okay.
that's where color actually comes in. It is not that there's not a material reality that it is fucking comporting to. That is not what a social construct means, that it doesn't comport to a material reality. It just means that it's a categorization that exists, whether independent of a material reality or
Okay.
not. It is the act of categorizing and having an ontological object that necessarily makes it a social construct.
Exactly.
Ontological
So in order to put a cap on it, see if I can make this more clear. White, the designation of a group with a skin color is an arbitrary distinction on a genetic reality. Does it make sense? Can we agree on that one?
That's not true. The
Well,
entire
okay.
thing is that
No,
white
Okay,
was never
this isn't
predicated-
even this
Wait,
isn't
hold on.
even the argument
No,
that
no,
I
no, no.
presented
Paternalism.
to begin with. This isn't even the
Paternalism.
argument I started with.
Can I talk? Can I say
Yeah,
something?
sure.
So, who's gaslighting?
Nobody's
Who's
gaslighting.
gaslighting? You or
Nobody's
me?
gaslighting anybody.
Who's lying?
What?
Who's lying? You or me? Who's lying?
Nobody's saying anybody is lying to anybody.
I agree
Yo, it
with
seems
Ray
like
J.
both First Amender and Ellipsis are being honest actors, so there's really no point in you.
No, you're being a dishonest actor.
Oh, I am
What?
not.
What?
What?
Yeah, I
You just-
agree with Ray J.
LOL.
You said
what are you doing, man?
ontological
Okay.
object, therefore you're a liar.
Yeah, this is just weird. So the entire thing
No.
is that going on to what Ellipsis just said concerning skin color. I just want to let, like Ellipsis, you and I had a similar conversation about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
in the past. Race is not predicated on skin color. So
No, well-
basically, like that's how it's very much interpreted when we basically take, let's say, a fucking pop culture view of Anglo fucking centric history. But it's not. It was never predicated on skin color alone. It was more so predicated on basically things such as like language, things such as basically your skull type. When we're talking about scientific racism that existed since the 1500s.
Yeah. I'm talking about modern race as it's defined and maintained by modern critical scholars, and so that's
But
my
it isn't.
criticism is in reaction to their
So-
definition.
So like,
So,
so
no
okay, hold on,
scholar-
real quick.
Can I just respond to that real quick? No serious scholar that's actually invested within the material that is not coming from a completely fucking critical theory oriented stance.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Classifies race as but the entire thing is that critical theory is literally just basically presupposing that race is nothing more than a structure of basically
Well,
like
there's, of
fucking,
course, there's more than that, right? I mean, of course,
No,
maybe.
but
So the distinction
Florian,
of
let me just finish. What I'm saying
ahead,
is that it's an irrelevant degree. It has no knowledge in biology. It has no
Yeah.
knowledge in basically like the fucking history of it. It solely seeks to basically classify it under the presupposition that it is a power dynamic with, let's say, property norms.
Exactly.
That's literally what
So-
critical theory is based on.
exactly.
And I just want to
Okay.
say that doesn't pan out in reality.
Okay,
Because
hold
the
on.
fact matters that we see,
Real quick,
let's
real
say
quick.
white as an
Real
extension of
quick.
Japhetic.
So one of the things that we did, like as humans, to determine exactly what the roots that
Bruh!
Can I please talk?
Oh, sorry, that was on my bed. I thought there was someone who was showing.
Okay, so one of the
Sounds
things
a
that
bad
we
boy.
did as humans is that we analyzed our natural migration pattern from the beginning of like human existence. Okay, we knew that it started in like a very specific place, in Africa, and then it kind of spread out. Okay, it started moving like in a northeastern motion, and then it went through into India and into China, and then it went up, and during the Ice Age it was a travel over from Russia into Alaska, and then there was a natural migration that went down from the North Americas and into South America through the Panama. So what I'm trying to say is when we were able to determine this with help of genetic understanding, that there is a level of genetic differences, and there were 3 major genetic differences, these being the areas where there were like the most amount of difference among humans, okay? And they could really only find like 3 basic races over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. So they found that black had a distinct genetic difference, and so did white, and then same thing with Mongoloid. Now they use Mongoloid. I know doesn't sound like a very nice word, but that's what they called it at the time. Is they use Mongoloid because it refers to people of the Mongol area, which can be denoted of people with rounder faces. So it's these people that were found in like Asian countries, and then as well through the migration of the North America to South America. The point being is that the race itself of like white, black, and Mongoloid is not up for a societal interpretation. You can confirm it with DNA on what race somebody is.
White isn't a continental race, my man.
So
And
that's
when you say-
entirely incorrect. Hold on, that's entirely incorrect.
No, you're wrong.
Shut, let
Dude,
me
no,
finish.
no.
No, you can't just fucking
Okay,
say
so
no.
just continue.
Yeah, Ray J is just.
So it's entirely untrue. The migration pattern is out of Africa up into the Middle East, into China, and then back from China back into Africa and into Europe.
Okay.
The only
What?
significant difference would be the separation to the Americas from Asia. So there's you can look this up. Biologists,
Okay, you're probably
modern
right.
biologists,
I'm not.
That's nonsense.
worldwide believe
nonsense.
that there's one human race.
Yes.
No,
And
what the
then-
fuck?
Every
man?
biologist
No, no,
believes
wait,
that there's
wait,
a human
one
ra- that
human race. You can look.
Yo, there's like 20 people over talking, and
Everybody
we're gonna
believes-
let Zora finish, and then basically I want to respond to
What
that.
they like to do is they like to pick out specific
Czar,
haplogroups.
human
Now,
isn't
when
a
you
race.
look at the haplogroups, you'll notice some things that are kind of intriguing. One of them is that Southeast Greeks share the most common ancestor with Somalians. Okay, so they're more akin to Somalians than they are to the rest of Europe.
Zora,
Now,
let me
hold on. You could pick out these different haplogroups and see that there's a correlation between skin color and how alike they might be, but that's not necessarily all always the case.
Okay,
And if
sorry.
you look at the modern,
Hey, you're talking too much, man. Come on,
you'll
please.
see that there's only one human race,
Okay.
and that any differences that you see are not necessarily significant on skin color.
Okay,
Yeah,
Zor,
that's horse shit.
let me just
Okay.
respond to this. Zor, you
This
are
wasn't even the
patently
original
false.
thing.
No,
Wait,
stop.
wait,
Let
let me just-
Esoteric respond.
You are patently false, and I remember you bringing this up, and I debunked it last time as well. You are patently false in almost every single statement you made. What you're conflating is China and Siberia, and what you're conflating even further is basically the Caucasus fucking migration of the Kurgan people. That is not tantamount to the full genome of basically what's expressed by Europeans. Two, when it comes to, let's say, the haplogroup, the paternal haplogroup of Greeks and Somalians, what you really mean is actually Ethiopians and Nubians and so on and so forth, and that's because they have common heritage from an older tribe known as the Natufians, and the Natufians were one of the first agricultural groups to exist within the Levant. The reason why these people share similar genetics paternally is because they have similar paternal ancestors, but Greeks are genetically closer to Europeans than they are to Nubians because of their total autosomal genetic code. And in terms of autosomal genetic code, we actually see that Greeks cluster exactly with the European cluster and going on towards to the Near Eastern clinal relationships.
Okay.
Why does culture matter?
So hold on. My original thing that I was trying to point out was that white privilege is real. Does anybody believe that it's not real?
Yeah, it's not real.
What the fuck?
Not
Okay.
real.
Okay, so people think
Well,
that
I
white
mean,
privilege is not real.
I think that that's invocation of racism, and I'm not a racist, and I don't use racism to go about my
No,
life.
no. But you can look at certain instances where there are like negative connotations to, like, for example, people having a lack of trade. So one of the things that like economists like to do is that they try to improve the amount of trade that overall people have. And so one of the things that economists have noticed is that there does in fact happen to be levels of I don't want to say subjugation, but there is like a level of discrimination where there are certain transactions that could be made, but effectively don't get to be made. So one example is, like, let's say you have a resume, a person who's reviewing resumes. So they did a study on people who would review resumes, and they had them sit down and review resumes. They would have two people basically with the same exact, credentials, except one of them had a name like John Smith, and the other one had a name like Jamal Johnson. And statistically, they pretty much picked the white person over the black-sounding name over and over and over, which is really interesting. You would say that there is no like white privilege, but that's a literal representation of white privilege. But economists know that this exists, and so what they do instead is, okay, well, what we should do is try to improve the amount of trade that could possibly happen, because this is literal denial of trade, that it could have been a transaction that happened, but it didn't because of a subconscious idea of like a skin color or like a societal connotation to it.
You're just saying it's prejudice, but if my name was Jamal and I was white, then it wouldn't be white privilege. It'd be name
That's
privilege.
kind of what I'm saying.
But you
like,
see, do you understand that the name Jamal is an inherently black name? Do you think that there are more white people named Jamal or black people named Jamal?
Cancer I just walked back in on?
What cancer? There's no cancer.
I just wanted to rebut this.
Chaos.
No, I'm just saying Jamal. No, see, like you're assuming that Jamal is an ethnically tied name. I'm not assuming that. I would actually argue that in fact, like, it's probably more multifaceted than just the color of somebody.
You wanna?
Right? So this is the thing. No, hold on, really quick, Ray J, hold on.
What about addressing?
So he gave me a hypothetical where someone
giving us this story.
Or let's let RV finish.
I'm addressing the topic. If someone's named Jamal and someone's named Rick, and they're applying for a job, and Rick is black and Jamal is white, your narrative falls apart.
Okay, do you understand?
Hold up, we're gonna let RV finish.
Yeah,
RV is dishonest.
Really quick. No, I'm not dishonest. I'm really not. I'm trying to be very honest here, okay? If my name's Jamal and Rick is black, and I get denied because my name's Jamal, if I infer that it's because of race, I would actually argue that I'm the one who's being more racist or racist at all.
I agree.
The reason I argue that is because there may be more at play than the presumption of someone's ethnic makeup because of their name. It could be that the exotic nature of the name causes someone to have a preference bias. That isn't necessarily because of the race. It could just be that the guy is a, let's say, he's a paleo-con, old school, old-timey, and he thinks everyone should have the name John. That doesn't have to be a racial argument. That could just be a cultural comfort argument. And that's kind of my point. You don't really know why the employer doesn't hire people named Jamal. You could say, well, I think most black people have the name Jamal and very few whites do. Well, I think that's a little racist.
Yeah, most black people have the name Jamal. That's what it is. Yeah.
No, but I think you kind of grab my import.
So what does Jamal means?
I just don't think that anyone should presume anything about someone's name. If there is someone saying, I won't hire people that are named exotically because I think they're going to be brown or black, yeah, that's disgusting.
Okay,
but
here's
I just
the thing.
don't think that that's as much of a problem as you're suggesting.
So people have found out, right, that it's not a conscious thing that happens. It is a literal, completely subconscious type of action, because when asked about these things, they pretty much would just say things like, oh, I just hired them, whatever. I just picked this one over the other. They were the same, but they wouldn't necessarily even realize what they did. So it's not really something that you can just regulate and make it go away. But when someone says that, white privilege doesn't exist, there is actual white privilege. That's an example of it.
Let me ask you really quick. Can you see why? Okay.
Like Othman has been trying to get his worth in, and I'm just trying to make sure everyone gets. So, Osman.
Yeah, go ahead, Othman.
I mean, I just forget it, but mainly it was.
Yeah, I know how you feel, dude.
Because he's just telling us. Obviously, Jamal means Jamal doesn't have any meaning in English, right?
It's generally a black name. It's generally a black name.
Yeah. Obviously, it's an foreigner. Therefore, I don't get his point of saying Jamal can be white as well. Yeah, it can be white as well, but in general, it's a foreigner. That's the whole argument.
I'd like to add this.
Yes, exactly. Perfect.
Only answer you are giving is, it can be white as well. Yeah, it can be white as well.
And I just want to ask if you guys can see how it is that I see that presumption as more racist than the implications of what does or doesn't happen in hiring.
Listen. I'm not saying we should literally subjugate whites. That's a completely different step. I will never say that.
No, I think assuming. Go ahead, Esso.
Yeah, the entire thing is that he's not assuming that. For example, we can understand that naming your children is necessarily a part of culture, right? And basically, RV is someone who understands that there can be a hegemonic culture, as all of us can understand that. And basically, when someone is penalized on behalf of their name, that's not implicitly tied to their ethnicity unless you assume that they have an incapability to actually assimilate to the hegemonic culture present within the area.
Right. Basically, the TLDR of that is that you're operating, I feel, to make the statement, Jamal is a generally black name. Where I come from, that statement actually doesn't even comport with reality. Now, I'm not saying that's most of America. It may not be. That's New York City. Okay, I understand that. Sure, fair point. However, that general, for you to say, generally. Well, no, not generally.
Okay.
The most densely populated metropolitan area in the country does not comport with what you just said.
Okay, no, here's the thing. There are names that are based in different. I don't know why that this is even that this is even a contention.
Because I think you're tying race to a naming.
Yeah, because there are actual names that are tied to the race. Like, for example, you can have a Greek name, you can have an Italian name, you can have an Icelandic name, you can have a Chilean name, you can have a black name. Of course. There's no question as to whether or not that's a black name. It's absolutely a black name.
But let's assume I have a vowel at the end of my last name, right? So it's not a Clark or a Smith, right? So it's not the typical Anglo-Western white, if you will, name, right? So, but should I presume that because it ends with a vowel, that on an application, someone obviously discriminated as to the image they put in their mind when they read the name? Or could it be other things? Or could it be that they don't? I mean, I just think that you're inferring a racist, discriminatory practice out of something we can't confirm is necessarily racist.
Because it is. It is in here.
You
There's
are
one
just
of them.
being
One of
dishonest.
them. One of them is basically politically charged, and the other one is not. So because one of them is politically charged over the other one, you generally are going to pick the one that's not politically charged because it's a safer decision to make, I guess.
Like, Uthman, you're saying I'm being dishonest, but I'm not.
You are
Like,
absolutely being
I-
dishonest.
No, I'm really not.
Because somebody-
I think you
somebody
guys
who's-
are. I genuinely think you guys are seeing
That's for
are concluding something before you're absolutely sure that that's what it is.
Because that's
Listen,
what it
my
is.
friend. Listen, my friend.
Okay,
You can
first
check the root of this name, and you can clearly see it's coming from Arabic. Yeah.
Wait.
it's-
So
it's
I should have to
foreign-
check. Wait.
it's-
So
hold
you're
up, hold
suggesting
up,
I should check the
hold up.
root?
Where Osman.
It's a foreign name. Therefore, obviously, implication of it is that person with this name is foreign, which is not white. That's
Wait.
simple.
This isn't. We're not Europe, buddy.
Yeah,
Well,
this
We're
is
not
being
Europe.
used.
Jamal can be an American. You're way out there with.
Show me
had to-
one Jamal
no.
with.
Wow,
had to
you're gonna say
confirm
show me an
why
American
not.
Okay,
Jamal?
but
Stop.
okay,
Yeah,
no,
please.
hold on.
Hey, here's a
Okay,
good point.
okay.
I got a
Even if
point
you
here.
do find
No,
even
hold
if
up,
you do
hold up.
find a person
Show me.
named, even if you do find a person that's named Jamal and they happen to be white, it still doesn't conflate the fact that Jamal is inherently a black name.
It's
Okay,
usually
so-
Arabic.
Why is it so hard to
might be-
understand that?
Yeah, I'm pretty
No,
sure it's a
dude,
Middle Eastern.
Dude, hold up. Like, all of you guys are missing the obvious point. First Amender, you keep saying it's innately a black name. It's inherently a black name.
Yes,
Why is it? Wait, why is it inherently?
because black people tend to statistically name their children Jamal over John.
Okay, so that's
Really?
wait. That's wonderful.
Yes.
American?
Yes.
Wait. That's wonderful. So your justification means that it is not innate if it's just a statistical fucking like naming progress. That's it. So technically,
Okay,
black people can just
If you
as easily-
perform a
wait. First Amender, I'm not done. The entire thing is that in relation to RV's point, he is assuming that black people has just as much capability to assimilate into the hegemonic culture, and that includes naming, as basically all others, right? And he's saying that since they can assimilate and this thing isn't innate to them, then there's no problem to be had, because any prejudice that you can point out is not prejudice against race, but solely prejudice against that which is alien to the hegemonic culture.
That's
I've known-
exactly what I'm saying, actually.
All right,
So, yeah.
so I've known Jamals that were Hispanic myself. Do you know anyone by the name of Selmile? What
No.
nationality would that be?
No idea.
This is why it's a
give-
silly thing, right?
You're
Because
still-
how
no,
do you
you're
even
still
do this based on names?
You are still
man?
conflating my argument.
She's from.
Like, I'm going to tell
It's
you
very
this: if you heard
frustrating.
my name on paper, you would not picture a blue-eyed white male.
No, but it's
yeah, I mean,
very
so
it's very frustrating that you
So
would
he's
say
not
that this
conflating
is.
your argument.
You're absolutely
He's saying
conflating
innate.
it. 100%
By the
conflating
way-
it.
You're saying it innate, and everyone disagrees with the word innate.
Yeah. By the way, Selmile is actually someone I know.
Okay.
Their father's first and mother's first name put together, and they're from Venezuela. But no one else has that name.
But first Amendment.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, if your name is Jose, what would you assume?
I don't assume anything. I'm from America.
don't-
People can have Listen, bro. No, hold on, really quick, just to comment on this, really.
But then
quick.
that's dishonest.
When you,
That
when
is
you
what
go
you're
off
saying
on
is
this, hold on,
dishonest.
Uthman, when you go, no, it's not.
Yes, it
Because
is. It's
Uthman
extremely
just before
dishonest.
told me no. What's
We're
dishonest?
gonna let RV finish and then first Amender go.
It's difficult because it's dishonest to tell me. Okay, this is why this is such a difficult thing. To tell me that there's no American Jamal, that it would be hard to find an American Jamal. Uthman actually invoked this before. I feel like he doesn't understand how diverse this country is. I really
Listen, my
do.
friend, I got it. Hold
Bruh,
up.
there's like
I
three.
got it, but
there's
you're
like three
saying
Jamals and like the fucking next door neighbors.
There
This
are
isn't
they-
exotic like it might be in Europe, bro. This isn't that exotic, and more to the point, it's not even that exotic to find a white boy with dreads named Jamal.
Yeah.
Stop.
all right. So So
Okay.
you said,
All right.
if I
Question.
heard,
Question.
well,
What
if
would
I
you say the
heard-
ratio
I gave
is?
the floor
If
for
you had to
First
guess,
Amender as
if
he
you had to
wanted
guess,
restate his fucking
if
argument.
you had to guess the
Right, so-
ratio of people who are named Jamal, okay, from black to white, what would you honestly tell me that the ratio is from black to white? Right? What would you
I
say?
have no fucking clue what that ratio
If
is.
I had to
don't even-
guess, I would
But you haven't
probably
changed
say,
your rate
if
before?
I had to guess, it would probably be somewhere around 98 black to 2 white.
That's like incredibly racist. This
Wait,
is
I-
all
No,
really
it's
racist.
not.
Do you not
There
like-
are names
Oh.
where people
we're gonna
prefer
let
to call them
Silent talk
if
since you
people.
were done, okay? The fact of the matter is that let's not just have him interject and then you. Actually, it wasn't even an interjection. Let's not have it that RV says something and then you immediately try to like reply to him when you were already done.
It's
okay?
just it.
So
No,
let's
it's
just-
disingenuous. What's happening there is that they're trying to conflate the fact that it is not racial based
dude.
when it in
Fuck,
fact
Sky.
completely is based on names.
He's still going, dude.
Silent, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask, like, why the fuck do we care at all about the name Jamal and whether
I
it's
don't know.
more black people than white people or anything?
All
Like,
right, check it
I'm
out.
sorry, I thought the topic was like fucking
That
like
white privilege
privilege
exists.
doesn't exist. I don't know why the fuck we give a shit about the name Jamal.
Yeah, but check it out.
So
he
it was
invoked
just a-
a study. There's
it was
a
just a
well-known
study.
I've actually checked it out many times. First Amender, if I may, and he should be unmuted soon if he can handle it. But I'm just sorry because I don't want to like talk at him, right? But I know the study. I'm pretty familiar with it. I've looked at it quite a few times. It basically confirms or says or posits, let's say, because I don't know if it confirms it, but sure, it posits it pretty substantially. I think they're
They have
inferring
me
the wrong
muted right now.
conclusions. Anyway, the study goes like this. They look at hiring, the habituations and hiring practices, what employers do. They looked at naming bias. They looked at if someone's John Smith, they're more likely to get the job than if they're Jamal Wilkinson, right? This is because of many things, I think, but he is saying this is a great piece of evidence that says there is white privilege. I'm not even arguing like naming genetic lexicon or genealogy. I'm not even going down here. I'm literally saying
What about immigrant names? Because I'm pretty sure that in a lot of industries, if your last name sounds fucking Chinese, sounds Korean, sounds Indian, oh boy, you got a whole lot of fucking privilege if your name sounds like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get
And
mad,
that's kind of, but this
still.
is my point, right,
Maybe.
Silent? I was taking the stance that I just think that anyone who and then he went, well, listen, Jamal is an inherent, he made this statement. I am not mischaracterizing. This is verbatim. Jamal is an inherently black name. And I just went,
Yeah, how could a name?
inherent-
How could sounds be inherently black? That's
inherent.
That,
yeah,
seems,
like
that
what?
seems irrelevant. That seems like we can move past that.
Anyway,
right?
but yeah, that's just a silly statement. That's my point. I don't think anyone. I
Yeah,
think
so
there's
like,
a lot
what-
of things at play.
What does First Amender think about the fact that there's all sorts of situations where people with names that definitely don't sound white have benefits over people who do? What about those instances?
Yeah, STEM.
Go ahead.
First
First
Even
Amender.
saying that,
You're
even
Go ahead.
saying
Worry
that is
for-
accepting these names have
So
Who's
Okay.
kind of cultural connotation.
yeah, okay, but
Wait,
hold
hold
on.
on,
There
Jamal.
are like to say that names don't have a cultural connotation is being dishonest.
I may
I
agree
think-
that they
so-
do.
so-
No, I may
hold on,
agree
hold
that
on,
they
hold
do.
on.
Rory, can
I
I just say one thing?
Well, like here's the thing.
Nobody said, worry, nobody said that it doesn't have a cultural connotation.
Okay.
The implication was that it doesn't have a racial connotation.
Yeah, but the
He
question,
is-
the
What?
question I was at,
Wait,
I
I
just want
just
him to
wanna
answer
finish
the.
this.
Can he
I
just
just
answer the
wanna fin-
question?
Sure. I just want to finish this off and then Silent, you repeat the question and he goes. The entire thing is that when it comes to RV's statement, it is simply about basically like how you can easily assimilate into the fucking standard norm as a black person. And that it is not an innately black thing, so you can easily change it. So prejudice against that thing, since it is not innately black, cannot be seen as racism.
Okay, okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Hold on, hold on.
Well,
Please,
the
please, please,
question's
please, if I
simple.
could,
The
please, if I
question's
could,
simple.
please,
What
if
do
I
you
could,
think-
I
please.
promise the floor to Silent.
Oh, let me just re-ask the question because you didn't fucking answer it, even though I posed it to you
Silent.
twice.
So like, oh.
He just doesn't fucking answer the question, bro.
Go ahead,
Bro,
Tyler.
look. We have all sorts of times when people are benefited by not having white names, like having fucking Asian-sounding names, Indian-sounding names within certain fucking industries. Is this true or not? And is this an example of fucking Indian privilege, Asian privilege, or whatever?
It's an assumption, I would say.
Shut up, binary.
Oh wait, I thought you asked in the room.
No, it's First Amender.
Oh, go ahead first. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was your question again? I was.
Dude.
I thought you were asking. I thought you were asking. I thought you were asking somebody else. I'm sorry. Please just tell me the fucking question.
Asking you.
Yo, is this guy? Someone else repeat it before I
Okay,
lose
so
my
the
fucking.
entire
Silence,
thing.
you're losing it, buddy.
Yeah, the entire thing. First Amender is very simple. Someone with an Indian sounding name or someone with a Korean sounding name tends to perform better when it comes to names. Is this like an example of basically something that goes against the narrative of white?
So the reason why that this is a thing is because economists realized that there was this problem and that there's a lack of trade in these specific sectors when you're referring to like different races. So they provided a market incentive, being that they would give them additional tax write-offs. The larger companies give them additional tax write-offs if they have like a certain quota of people. So like what this does is that it doesn't necessarily like harm the market in any way. In fact, it actually works with the market, being that, you know, these people, it actually makes the company money to hire people who are, you know, who might be of a different race.
You're fucking dodging my question. Answer my question.
No, I am not.
Asian people in some industries, if your name says Win on it, or if your name fucking sounds Indian, you are more likely to be at the top of the stack. Yes or no? And is that an example of fucking Indian or Asian privilege?
Sure.
Yes or no?
Yes.
If your name is German, you know how to give some sausage.
Yes.
Okay. So okay. So you've just conceded that this entire thing about white fucking privilege when it comes to particular is more about particular industries and about people's fucking judgment bias, not about white people having some kind of inherent fucking privilege based on the color of their skin.
But it does. It literally proves that.
If a black person named Jamal Wilkinson renames himself to fucking John Smith, right? It's not white privilege, it's name privilege.
Yeah.
but
Okay, but if the name has if the name is tied, to like a culture of people,
not, yes, culture, not
then,
race.
Okay.
You said race. You said inherently black.
You're trying to fucking play around with my fucking words here. Okay,
No
you're
one's
trying
playing with it. That's a verbatim
I'm telling.
sentence
Okay,
by you.
okay,
That's what you said.
is white race or culture?
What if I name my son Adolf?
Is white race or culture?
Honestly, it's
Is white race or culture?
Yes. Is it a race or a culture?
It's a fucking label that doesn't accurately delineate between the two.
Is it a race or a culture? It's a basic question.
Like the entire thing is, I can actually answer that question. White is categorically a subrace. When you were saying white before with your whole racial like categorization of genetic like association, white was never considered a continental race. Caucasoid is considered a continental race. White is a subrace, or more so European is a subrace of continental race. So white devils.
So yeah, so if there is a, are you trying to imply there is a culture? Because if so, can you describe white culture?
Okay, I guess what I'm just saying is there is an inherent like desire towards like white people in certain instances. There are instances where black people actually lose out when a white person actually gains.
Right, and it's industry dependent, and it's industry dependent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I agree with that. And additional, so like here's the thing though. So based on that, there has to be, and this is the original contention, that there exists white privilege.
No.
Yeah, I mean, like, hold on a second.
Okay,
Can I give you, hold on.
I'll concede there's white privilege if you concede there's black privilege.
Yeah, there's certain instances
really
of black
quick,
privilege.
really
yeah,
quick,
no,
really quick,
absolutely.
really
No,
quick.
there are instances of black
let me give
privilege.
you-
Sure.
let me give you an
Sure.
example.
White privilege if there's also other types of fucking racial privilege.
Because when I say white privilege, it triggers more people.
What's gonna happen is that First Amender is gonna respond to silent, and then RV is gonna.
The reason why I pointed out white privilege is because it actually triggers the most amount of people. Like that's like when someone says white privilege, they
No,
I'm not a
racism
troll.
triggers the most amount of people, bro. Because racism is.
Yeah, we're gonna let RV finish his sentence in peace.
Listen. The reason it triggers the most amount of people, okay, quote, white privilege. It's not because there's some white zeitgeist of wrong think you can't commit against the whites. That's not the problem.
That's not
the
what I
problem
said.
is that you. No, stop it. I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying that tends to be okay. The implications. Now, if it's not, that's fine. You're just thought experimenting. You're just trying something out. Whatever. But the problem here is that you're being racist. And my
No,
initial
no.
argument that your mode of thought is more racist than mine is more substantiated now than it was 5 minutes ago. And I'm just going to add on to that if a guy named Thomas Smith goes out for the NBA as opposed to Jamal Shaheem, okay, the black guy has more privilege in that situation. You know why?
Correct.
You know why also? Hey, guess what? I'm for that. You know why? Because they're better fucking basketball players nominally. You want to talk about racism. Okay,
Wait,
this is a generalization, and it's not even technically accurate. Okay, so and I'll concede that. And hold on, no, really quick, and I'll concede. Hold on, stop. And I'll concede that that's more of a stat. It's not really inherent, and that's my point, isn't it? No, stop. I'm bringing it back, and I'm going to conclude this. And it's not really inherent. And what you said about the name Jamal being inherently black, and that this is because when people are hiring people, they go, "Oh, Jamal Shaheem, don't want a black man in my office." This is ridiculous. No one does this.
No. It's subconscious. It's subconscious. It's not.
Oh yeah, people are just subconscious.
Yes, because it's actually studied and
We're
understood.
gonna let American talk and then Zor, since he's been trying to talk. Then we're gonna let First Amender go back. If you want to talk after them, just message me in politics links and I will queue you up.
Huh? Who the fuck are you to decide?
He's the
Mod.
He's the mod?
Just mute that guy. Yeah, hold on. Whoever that was, I think it's fucking anti. Just mute him if he does it.
Yeah, but his voice is
For
funny.
something so small.
I like it. Like, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so America, you were saying something?
Oh yeah, no, not much. I was just pretty much just saying, like, First Amender pretty much just admitted he just came on here to trigger the white people. And it's like, if you said that in context, you're like, you don't even really want to actually have a debate. If I just came on here and I was just like, well, like most of the crimes, like homicides, like homicides are caused by black people. And if I later just said, oh, I just came on here to trigger the blacks, like you're not really like.
No.
Wait, before you even continue, First Amender, I did promise the floor to Zora afterwards.
Okay, so I get 5 people who have to go talk to me,
Not
and then I
every
get to
single
respond
one
after 5
disagrees
people.
with you. Literally, just let them get.
I will allow him to speak before me.
Okay.
So go ahead, First Amender.
Okay. God damn it, I'm losing my fucking train of thought. So, I guess. Well, the thing is, I'm not saying that there's like a black superiority, white superiority, nothing like that. Absolutely not. Okay.
Obviously there is.
I just happened to notice one of the things, and I literally fought against this for a very long time, that, you know, that there is no white privilege, that white privilege is effectively something that is like made up, and is, but it was over time that I started to realize, oh crap, that there are actual studies that are proven and peer reviewed that actually point to like a racist intent. It may not necessarily be conscious, it may not necessarily be like a thing. There could be laws that are actually like specifically built against a specific race of people. We have seen that. Like, I know like Nixon passed the law on open carry, where he basically said that it was okay to not allow any kind of open carry throughout, but the whole purpose of that was to stop specifically the Black Panthers. That he literally had said that in interviews, that he wanted to stop the Black Panthers from open carrying. So there are laws on the books today that have been literally used to target blacks, and therefore more examples of white privilege, being that there are laws that subjugate black people. Now, as a libertarian capitalist, I am 100% against a lot of SJWs. I fucking hate a lot of SJWs because it gets really fucking cringy, really fucking fast. So, but don't categorize me as this like fucking leftist fucking SJW cuck that's just here to trigger people. No, that's not the case, okay? I'm saying white privilege is real, even though I don't like the fact that it exists.
You just admitted that you wanted to trigger people.
No, before we even
No, it just gets people reacted the most, and so it gets a lot of people.
America, hold up. That's not even necessary to respond to. The fact of the matter is that there's a more important conversation, and not anyone is really going ahead to categorize you as a leftist. I don't think a single person even used that fucking term within the entirety of this chat since I've been here. We're gonna move on to Zor, and then Silent is gonna have to...
Can I chime in, by the way?
Yeah, sure, after Silent.
Sure. So, just to address the previous point, that is a clear goalpost shift on the part of First Amender, making an argument first of white privilege and then making an argument of what you call it.
Yeah, racism's fucked up, by the way. Let me just say that.
Yeah, let's let Gore finish like uninterrupted.
There's no inherent difference between when racism occurs as a matter of systematic oppression or when we're talking about the argument of white privilege. The problem is when you want to make an argument of systematic oppression and white privilege, they're inherently different. One is a law passed to do so, and the other one is inherently a subconscious bias. So in this situation, it's a clear goalpost shift to get us away from the argument and to kind of cover your own ass.
No.
Yes, it is.
No,
it's
it's
completely
not.
irrelevant to the point of hiring.
If I did, it was entirely by mistake, and I am more than happy to go back onto the point.
Answer First Amendment, or at least on the concept of hiring practices being a clear.
No, the original argument was: is there white privilege? That's it.
To understand that there is an ontological framework.
I'm muted again.
To come in with this, you have to inherently already believe that there is some sort of form of superiority to a group of people, or assume that just because they pick for a certain group, it's inherently because they are superior. It is considered a bigotry of low expectations in most situations and comes from an ontological framework and a philosophy that doesn't even understand its own understanding of social power and chooses to only delineate people based off what they believe is their inherent social worth to society. So inherently speaking, I'm willing to make the argument and say that First Amendment using the argument of saying that white people or choosing people on the basis of white names or things of that nature come from a place of bad faith, and that the argument in general of leftists or anybody for that matter making an argument on the basis of race for either hiring practices or privileges as to whether or not they cannot assimilate into a culture are inherently coming from a place of bad faith and should not be given any sort of proper cadence.
And they're actually most likely racist themselves.
Before you continue to add
No,
on.
I yield that time to RV, and I believe he's absolutely correct.
Right. You can't yield it to RV because there's already
Oh, that's
someone
true,
queued up.
true.
So
Yeah,
the fact of the matter,
absolutely.
so
Sorry.
the fact of the matter is that we're gonna have Silent Go, then Anti, then First Amender, and then Ferrami or whatever. Oh.
I think that First Amender, like, I think if there's like this idea of like how do I put it? This idea of like trying to single out one particular race and being like this race has privilege is really fucking dishonest. And I know that you're doing it as a meme or whatever. And I know it's just here to fucking trigger some noobs on the goddamn internet, right? But the reality of the situation is that all the different groups, no matter how you want to split them, have things in which and situations and places where they are benefited by that status, and other places where they are not benefited by that status. And it would be fucking super dishonest, right, for us to go around talking about white privilege as if all the other privileges didn't exist. And I think it's fucking ridiculous that people go around talking about white privilege as if white privilege is the fucking source of all goddamn evils, dude. It's really fucking cringe, honestly.
Okay, so
Alright, Ben Shapiro. The thing is, you accept. Hold up, may I answer?
No, you may not. So,
What a wonderful discussion we have here.
I promised the floor to Anti. We're just gonna have it there. Silent. I'm also gonna unmute fucking First Amender.
Bruh.
Because dude, I have him on mute.
Dude, it's such a wonderful method of like facilitating discussion, dude. Okay, listen, here's my 2 cents. So the whole issue about, let's say, more African names, somebody brought it up, and there was a speculation about, let's say, where do they actually come from? Well, in the 60s and 70s, there was a revival, right, of Afrocentric, essentially, cultures, usually in academic circles, and later on in, like, more political, let's say, movement that came after the civil rights, basically, okay? You can read more about it on fucking Wikipedia, by the way. So, like, majority of those African names, like Jamal, dude, and, like, the rest, is that basically, like, political filth that a lot of parents in this specific era, basically, for political reasons, decided to call, their sons and daughters to distance themselves from the white community, okay? Like, if you go back before that, like, a vast majority of all the blacks, basically, in the ghetto, outside of the ghetto, anywhere, okay? Even before the civil rights, okay, used to call themselves white names, white last names, okay? They changed the whole thing because of political reasons, and now they're suffering for it. I think there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, okay? So, and second thing, actually,
just
if you're a libertarian, right, and you don't believe in freedom of association, you kind of, there's something wrong with your brain, basically, okay? If you believe that there must
That's not what I said.
some freedom, there must be some freedoms, but yet I cannot discriminate, let's say, on the basis of any basis I want to, if I'm a businessman, by the way, right? So ask yourself, I just want to ask one thing, actually. So what are your thoughts on the gay cake issue?
Really quick. Wait, I want to.
Wait, we're gonna have First Amender respond, my man.
Put me in line somewhere.
So, okay, here's the problem though. Okay, if everybody is asking me a question and I got like 5 people asking me a question, it's very difficult for me to respond when it takes 5 people to ask a question and then I have to I have to like just say my piece on all 5 questions. Is that how that works? Like I get enough time to do that?
Yes.
All
All right, fine. I'll start writing down questions. Okay, so just okay, fine, whatever. So
You're terribly oppressed.
Okay, no, here's the thing. My original argument was, is there white privilege? Nothing else. Not, is there black privilege? Is there like a thing that's over here? Is there a thing over there? No, it's, is there white privilege? And I say, there is white privilege. And I've even proved it. But people are telling, okay, but there are actual peer-reviewed studies that confirm that there are inherent biases towards certain races specifically.
Yeah, they confirm this based on a
Yeah, we're gonna let him respond without.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like this. Okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt
There
you.
are
I
actual.
just think the inference
okay.
they
I'm trying to
form
calm
is
down.
bad.
I'm trying to calm down. So
Yeah, it's just like
there are
anti-black
actual studies that confirm, like through sociology, through economics, through like there's a bunch of different studies which are peer-reviewed and pretty much understood that there are instances of black oppression, or that there is white privilege.
Right. Okay, but black oppression may occur. I may even agree with that. That's all I'm going to say. I may even agree with that. That's not what you initially said, though.
I said that there's white privilege.
We're gonna let
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if every other race, right,
Yeah,
could
yeah,
have
hold on,
like
hold on.
negative
Let SO,
connotations.
SO, go ahead, dude.
Actually, First Amender, were you done?
I mean, and then the other thing is that people have been filling my mouth up with words saying that like.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, they're saying like, oh, you must be, you say you're a libertarian and you're this and that. And I'm like, no, that's okay. We're not, like, let me just start
You're not
writing this stuff down,
Am I
okay?
wrong?
I'm
Dude,
extreme. No, yeah, I am a libertarian. No, that
First
wasn't the
Amender, let me just make something clear. When there's a discussion, there's not necessarily just going to be a 5-minute dialogue, in which you would simply have a single chance of when
Okay,
to respond.
so if everybody is addressing me, can I
Wait,
like respond
let me
back?
just finish, and you'll understand what I mean. When it actually comes to basically this discussion, a lot of people want to add themselves to this conversation and they want to put their ideas forward. Once those ideas are put forward, they can then be reintroduced later on as you sort them out. This is why usually most discussions occur more than 5 minutes, but actually take, let's say, 30 minutes or so on and so forth. I expect this discussion is going to necessarily be the same. And you're going to have your chance to respond to every single one of these people as they reintroduce their ideas during the conversation.
Very well. Fine, that's fair.
Now, you should
Just
finish
stop
up
yelling over the top of people when it's their turn.
Yeah, you should, like, trust me, Silent is as nice as me, so if you trigger him one more time, you're gonna, like, end up with 2 hours. I'm gonna use you as the bat.
I won't need him for 2 hours. It's just like, if you're gonna get
apologize.
talk
3
as long as if you're gonna get the floor, other people are gonna get the floor. You know.
The
Oh
entire
my
thing.
god, the mod circle jerk. Just get on with the conversation.
Just kiss each other.
Excuse me, if you're not kissing my ass, what are you good for, Dan?
Okay,
The
so
entire thing is that we're just gonna continue on with Ferrari and.
Alright, so the entire thing is mod's good.
Silence induced were sitting on a tree, and they were key.
Yo, we're gonna let the anime character talk.
Yeah, so I'm the anime character. And I wanted to put forth some arguments in support of there being white privilege and why it's a little bit more important than any other kind of privilege. So obviously there are groups in America, at least, that are kind of oppressed in certain aspects, whether it either just be direct racism in today's like current day and age, or if it's still just like the trickle down effect from past racism, and things still haven't quite balanced out yet. Like
Let
obviously,
me check. Feminist disregarded.
Shut the fuck up.
that was the funniest thing I've heard today. No,
You're not a woman.
thank you.
So please continue.
So what? It's cringe.
What?
Just continue.
You guys are fucking with my head. I can't. Damn, Jesus Christ. Fuck me, dude. You guys actually.
For a
fucked
second,
me
I thought I was
over,
speaking to
dude.
a woman, but then I realized it's a man. So
Stop, dude. You're making me fucking lose my train of thought, and I'm actually trying to educate y'all.
As I thought.
Fucking god, dude. Where even was I, dude? I fucking hate all of you.
So you were
I'm
explaining
so
why
mad.
white privilege was a bigger problem than other
Oh,
forms
yes.
of privilege.
In America, if you look at like people who hold the most amount of wealth and all that kind of shit, it generally tends to be white people. Now, as time goes on, you can tell that like it's getting a lot more diverse. Like you can see people who are black and Asian and so becoming millionaires and like billionaires even. Like it's going to take a long time for things to like completely balance out. But I think that's the whole point of white privilege, just to be cognizant of the fact that in the current moment, people have advantages in society, and these advantages can either improve somebody's odds of being successful, greatly successful, or diminish them. And I don't think there's like any denial of there being black privilege in certain fields. Like for example, like the basketball example, even though it's kind of stupid. Like it's somewhat true.
Well, it is statistically true, right?
Yeah, it's somewhat true.
Well, no, not somewhat. Here's the thing: the delineation. Just to be clear, right? The reason I used that example was because I could tie it back to the original contention, which was the inherent. Let's say, well, it was about a name, but I tied it back through an analogy, right? Because I wouldn't argue that that's inherent. I would just say that that's like a statistical cultural norm. People know, like the coaches, the owners know. Yeah, young black dudes play basketball 16 hours a day for fucking 8 years before they go to the NBA, so I'm going to hire them. Like, okay, yeah, that's a stigma more than it's inherent.
Yeah, the entire thing has kind of been established. We have to actually move forward with like Uthman and then fucking Zor.
Yeah, somebody else can go and I can go later after I get a little bit more better with my thoughts.
That's
and wording.
Alright.
So go ahead, Uthman. If
Are you talking about me? Did
I
you say
don't
me?
have anything to say.
Okay, so like one person did regard like this like white privilege thing to be.
Alright, First Amender, I wasn't talking about you, I was saying Osman.
Oh, okay, go. Sorry. Go ahead.
Don't worry.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to Zor, since
All
your
right.
point was already made.
Actually, I'm going to let First Amender go first if he wants to, and then I'll go after because I want to see his answer if he actually before I go any further.
Yeah.
Because if not, I'm just going to rake him over the coals afterward.
Okay, so I just wanted to point out that somebody referred to wealth and race in this discussion, and so I am definitely absolutely not an equality of outcome type of person. Okay, I pretty much 100% disagree with it pretty heavily. Okay, I am, however, equality of opportunity, just as most libertarians are. So if I do see that there are opportunities that are being removed, like through the justice system, through corporate hiring system, etc., or like a more societal issues that create like a person's starting point to be lower, then we can basically do market positive procedures that promote trade, not denies it. I'm not saying that we should have an equality of outcome. I'm saying that you can make like basic changes to fix these things. But I mean, my original contention is that there is white privilege, but it's sounding to me that people believe that there is white privilege now.
Okay, as a libertarian, how do you fix that problem?
Status quo already solves.
He should look into fusionism, but
we're gonna let Zor respond and then First Amender.
Amender, I don't necessarily disagree. Making some sort of policy that is considerately racist, or making an actively racist decision that we shouldn't make an action for it. But the status quo has already solved this problem. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as well as all the other civil rights policies that have come since then, that have made it so that paying someone differently, not hiring someone on the basis of race, color, creed, or any other protected factor is considered illegal in the United States. So I would argue that regardless of the fact, if you want to say that, your previous point, we've already solved for that. And while it might not be 100% parity, it's slowly moving that way. So I would say that you cannot make an inherent argument saying that it's white privilege. It's already being resolved. That problem has already been fixed. Now, on to the main point, since nobody seems to have wanted to answer, whether that be the other person who brought up wealth inequality or First Amender, stating that there is an inherent philosophical bias or a subconscious bias thereof of both parties, making the argument saying that just because, or that you have bigotry of low expectations of groups to be doing worse, just like it's almost like pitying people almost. And I'm making the argument here that since you're not going to answer it, contend with it, that you are inherently being racist in some sense, stating that people aren't doing well. It's not because, you know, they're not doing it or they're not simply qualified for it. It's because they're black, or it's because they're brown, or it's because they're yellow. It shouldn't be taken with those views at all. And I inherently think that since we're not looking at that argument, the bias that you two seem to be holding, that maybe we should either move to either that area or start questioning the fact that maybe the premise itself of saying that white privilege is what you say it is intrinsically wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, I
would
just have to
argue-
say it's not okay to be white. Thank you.
I would argue there's more of. I would
Can
argue that
somebody
what we're
explain to me
describing
what-
this
Oh,
whole time.
I have
really
answers
quick,
to
I would
two
argue that
questions.
What we've been describing this. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first question that somebody had asked me is like, what would you do to solve the issue? Okay. So one of the things that I would do, like if like you're talking about like a hiring situation, you basically would give companies like additional tax write-offs if they do hire like a certain amount of minorities. Like that seems like you basically give money back to the companies, and at the same time, you know, blacks or minorities would actually do a lot better. You can also go through laws that specifically subjugate minorities disproportionately. For example, as lowering sentencing for the sentencing of crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is actually, for lower doses, actually far, far higher sentencing than that of just regular cocaine. There is an inherent racial intensity to that because you can see that crack cocaine, disproportionately more minorities use crack cocaine as opposed to white people using cocaine. So I mean, you could do like basic law changes that would like, you know, that would affect black people less, or minorities less. Additionally, you could also remove. Let me finish. There's additionally, you could also remove laws on zoning laws for schools regarding ghetto neighborhoods. Right now, if you are living in a ghetto neighborhood, you are subjugated into a zone of a school that basically only receives funding through the property taxes of that ghetto neighborhood, and therefore is a disproportionately worse neighborhood, or a worse school to go to. And then finally, you can provide tax write-offs for companies willing to give loans to minorities. Like, you know, you have companies that, you know, you give them tax write-offs over, you know, a tax write-off towards hiring, but then you could, for example, go to a bank and say, hey, you know, you should give, you know, if you give minorities a certain amount of loans, then, you know, here's a tax write-off for that. So that would inherently, and then the second question was, me saying these types of issues inherently makes me racist.
You logged out.
What? I logged out?
You lagged out for like.
I lagged out
for like maybe.
Okay,
10 seconds, yeah.
I'll start over. So, talking about an issue regarding race does not necessarily make you racist. Racist implies that there is a superiority or inferiority, which I think the only superiority and inferiority is entirely cultural and not genetic, ergo not racist. Okay.
I would argue it's more about your
Why would we do
prejudging of
any-
somebody.
Can I go? I was trying to talk.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Why would we do any of that? Like everything that you mentioned has like negative consequences for the opposite party, like allowing it. Why would we even want to do that?
Okay, so none of the things that I have proposed.
Yeah, they do. I'll explain. So the first one you said, for instance, like giving tax breaks to businesses who hire minorities. The more minorities that get hired, the less white people that get hired. Because, you know, when people get hired, someone else doesn't get hired. Allowing, like, for instance, black people to go out of school from the ghetto. Studies have shown that regardless of your race, if you go to school with more mixed people, they tend to do way worse. Whether it's a white person going to black school or a black person going to a white school. You know, so everything that you also is sort of inherent that people are naturally biased. Why do you want us to go against like our natural instincts?
But I would just say I liked
just because it's natural doesn't
I
mean
liked
it's
the
good.
redirecting of the tax money idea. That was a good one. But everything else you said does have some risks to it of excluding the other and causing an imbalance, is what Daphne is basically saying.
But you realize that we're already in an imbalance.
Wait, that's just if you assume that black people and white people have the same.
Right, are inherently different.
No, we're not. I never said what. No, that doesn't.
That's been the whole argument. I don't know if you just came into the room, but again,
No, I
this whole
didn't.
thing.
Been here for
Okay.
a while now. I'm not saying that
Well,
they're
yeah. This whole
inherently
thing has to
different.
do
I'm
with
just saying that
yeah.
society, like speaking, like socially speaking, they are on average experiencing like different kinds of lives, right? Like do you think that after the civil rights movement, like people just fucking like snap their fingers and then like, oh wow, all the money was distributed equally and all
What
that
does
stuff?
that matter? That's what I'm saying. Like, why does it matter? Like, all of you are saying like black people are oppressed. Well, they have to be oppressed by somebody, right? Like a higher up group. So white people are the higher up group. Why should white people care whatsoever about lowering their status for another group of people? I feel like I don't need to care about that at all. I'd rather my own people get ahead in certain
My own
regards.
people, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Jesus
I
Christ.
mean, I'd
But
argue
listen, it's all up to the individual.
Yeah, I'm not coming from her side of the argument.
don't
My
argue
side
about
of the
why you
argument was
should
totally
care.
different.
Yo, we're gonna left like the anime characters.
In some ways.
She asked me a question.
I just don't want people to assume
Yeah.
that we're all arguing.
Yo,
that.
let the
letting that-
females talk. It's a cat fight. Shut up.
Is that a girl?
Grill.
Kind of.
What?
What?
Okay, fire away.
You guys know her. Just shh.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So when it fuck me, dude.
Stop
Yo,
saying
stop smoking weed and
Can
try
I-
to have
can I
arguments.
Could I
You smoke way too much fucking weed.
I don't
You
even
can't
smoke
argue.
weed. I
Shut
don't know
up.
what you're talking about. Shut the fuck up.
Okay.
Why
you're
should
just
you
saying-
care? Why should you care?
You're just saying you prefer
Okay.
your race over other
Okay,
races.
okay,
Holy
okay.
hell,
So
we're gonna let the fucking anime character respond without interrupting.
So why should you care, right? This is really getting into more of like a moral / emotional argument rather than like a social one. But the reason I think you should care is because, in my opinion, people should all have equal opportunity and equal chances to, I guess, live the American dream. And right now, the American dream is really hard for many people to live, or to achieve, I guess, because of certain things that are affecting them just by being born, right? Like, so if you're born in a poor neighborhood, you're getting like fucking shit education. You're like, if you ever apply to a job, you're most likely not going to get it.
Okay, so this is the
And
Yeah,
that's
but
because
the
of
American
races.
like,
I like-
dream. Hold
It's
on.
not
The
because of
American dream is
racism,
not
it's
equality.
I'd just like to
Because of the American.
And if you know how to
let
use the
me.
internet, you're
Yo,
pretty much well
we're
off.
just gonna let this happen.
The mod interrupted me for some reason.
No, the mod is gonna continue interrupting you. I swear to God. The entire thing is that let's just make it clear: Zor's, Daphne, and Auntie's argument can all be summarized as this simple point at this point, and that's that necessarily there is not positive action on behalf of any sort of statecraft that negatively basically discriminates against blacks or so on. There's not something that's actually predicated in race in terms of discrimination. So why are you then putting forward, you First Amender, and putting forward that basically that we need to have positive action on behalf of statecraft to say that we need to negate freedom of association and we must actually try to import restrictions or benefits that put one group over another?
I mean, that's
okay,
not
okay,
necessarily my argument
all of the
for one.
laws. Can I respond to that?
All right, fire away. I wish to go after you though.
Okay, so like two things. All of the things that I had just like said does not revoke the autonomy of white people. It does not revoke the autonomy of black people. In fact, it increases autonomy of people because you're literally taking money from the government that is taken to you by force and then it is being given back to people who want it, right? Or that they had paid it already. So you give people tax write-offs. That's why I said specifically a tax write-off. Additionally, you're talking about somebody had asked me if like, why should we care? Well, you should generally care because societally, if you have more players that are able to do more economic decisions, they are able to transact in businesses or transact with just people or contractors. These people effectively are bolstering the economy as a result and not being like a leech on the system. Okay, so the other thing, well, the other thing is the circular issue that I think that people often misrepresent is when you have your parents, right, where like through societal outcome, these people just happen to be shitty, right? Like they just have gone to jail a lot, they have done bad decisions, and so then they breed a child who then also, of course, because that they lack the moral, consistency, that, or maybe like the father is in jail for some reason. Maybe the father got to jail because like that there were just
you're
more.
adding new points.
No.
You're also
No, please let me finish. Please let me finish. Just please. If I'm guaranteed the ability to finish, please just let me finish. Okay, so if you have this where the child, is effectively not reared properly, as a result, this person then grows up and actually becomes also a shitty citizen. And so that shitty citizen then just makes more shitty citizens. So what you can do is you can make actual like economic changes or changes that don't necessarily revoke the autonomy of people, that it does not subjugate white people, and it actually increases the autonomy of black people or of minorities.
You're repeating yourself. You're
well,
not
this,
understanding.
this,
talking about Planned
this,
Parenthood.
well, no. This removes,
We're gonna let Zora respond, okay?
well, it removes the circularity.
If we're going to make an argument, this has clearly proven my point that inherently speaking, that First Amender does not seem to want to have a proper debate on the. In fact, he wants to continue to perpetuate this concept of a bigotry of low expectations, assuming the fact that people come from bad households mean they will be bad, is a absolutely bigoted misunderstanding of the situation. You misunderstand how SES affects race, or the fact that there is a correlation between SES. And the fact of the matter is that's absolutely bigoted and it's absolutely wrong. You are implying the fact that a person's race has some sort of merit to their social power in life, and that theory is intrinsically wrong. What we need to understand is, if we want to make things better for people, we should make it so that it's possibly better for their situations and better for the infrastructure. I will agree that actually, if you want to make any of stated, the zoning laws for ghettos could be possibly fixed. I would personally say, if you wanted to do something, I would say give money to private companies to open schools in those areas. I'll give a tax break to any private company that wants to open up a charter school in a what is considered a quote unquote bad neighborhood. That way, you actually do increase the autonomy. You will increase the ability for people to test better, because charter schools have been shown to increase test scores, and you alleviate the population's issues.
Okay, so
now, I'm going to wait one moment, because I do want to get back onto the attitude. First Amendment, the other person's arguments. We need to understand that when we are making an argument, we're not stating this is not something that we don't believe in. I am merely stating that your intrinsic biases are having you believe that black people or brown people are inherently inferior. Hence, you mean that we need to give some sort of societal help to assist them. I necessarily think that is incorrect, and I think we need to understand that you are coming from a place of a bias.
Well, I never said anybody was
What is
inherently.
wrong with like a bias? And who says inferior? It's just a difference, right? Like maybe inferior, but what does that even matter?
But his argument's weaker, Daphne.
Alright,
That's what
before
happens.
we continue, I'd like to add something real quick. The fact of the matter is that while Zora actually necessarily gave a response to things such as basically more freedom of association in terms of the schooling system, you necessarily cannot say that for, let's say, a First Amender's opinion on basically, how do I put it forward, the specific subsidies that he seeks to give to employees. We all know that basically labor actually chases after demand, right? And that necessarily, because labor chases after demand, and then demand in of itself is not infinite, labor in of itself is not infinite. So you are necessarily adding an externality that has benefactors and has losers within that given policy point. And losers are specifically the outgroup that RM mentioned within that policy. And you are basically by and for saying, I'm going to be perfectly fine with having this externality that negates the ability of freedom of association for employers to act as they would unintervened by simply giving subsidies, and thus a competitive advantage by those who actually follow what I wish them to actually do. You are necessarily doing that. That is an economic principle that's held by almost every single fucking libertarian think tank out there, from Mises to fucking Cato to Heritage.
Okay.
In fact,
Can I respond? Because there's like 3 things thrown my way.
No, there's like literally 2 points.
Okay, so somebody had said that it's inherently bigoted for me to say that somebody who is poor can't become rich. And so like I agree with you that there are people that who are poor, they can become rich, but this does not refute the fact that the chances of somebody being born in poverty is a much higher percentage of staying poor as opposed to getting rich. And as someone who is rich, most likely has a greater possibility for being rich as opposed
but not because of race.
becoming... Well, no, but okay.
Let him respond without interruption.
Wait, that's the point of order.
Please. Okay, so like when someone says that it's not that, then it's not necessarily the case, because like, I mean, you can bring up an example, like somebody is born like born into millionaire household, right? The chances of that person becoming a crack dealer is literally almost zilch. You have to fuck up so monumentally it would be insane. So then the next one is somebody had mentioned that like a tax write-off somehow being a subsidy. A tax write-off is not a subsidy. Liquid capital is far more valuable to a company compared to tax write-offs, and also a tax write-off just means that the people get to keep their money and not steal other people's money to then give it to minorities.
Okay, let me just respond to this. Tax write-offs are literally by definition a subsidy.
Yep. And I'd like to
Hold on. If I legitimately say that instead of taking $600, right, you now have I'm taking $500. Did you not just gain $100 that you didn't expect you wouldn't gain? Like, this seems like really fucking simple. I don't know why that's complex, dude.
I think the person not understanding subsidy is actually you, First Amender, not to like shit on you or anything, but subsidy just means bearing, essentially, like in lexicon, applied in any Western democratic state. It just means that it's compensated for through
to say a tax write-off,
taxation, redistributed funds. So, like, I get your point. Liquid capital is a lot more valuable. That's true. That's true. However, you can't then say, "Oh, well, that's not a subsidy." No, it is. It's a form of subsidy.
I'd also like
I mean, I guess like by government standards, they can call it a form of subsidy, but to say, okay, like here's the thing. Let's say if like I charged you $200 a month, right? And you know, for the entire year for my services, whatever it may be. Maybe I sell you widgets every year or every month. Okay, and you pay me $200 a month for these widgets. Okay, at the end of the year, I then say, okay, now it's going to be $180 a month. Aren't I generous? Isn't that a subsidy? No, of course not. No accountant would ever say that. A subsidy is a literal liquid cash inflow.
But you used a different context where there was one capital earner doing that with another capital earner. This is not the same context.
Exactly. So the entire thing is that taxation is meant to be ubiquitous if a fair competition is meant to be held. That's why basically when certain industries are given subsidies in the form of tax benefits, like let's say the steel industry, they have an unfair competitive advantage that allows them to continue their bad employment practices that basically makes them more competitive towards industries that would be more profitable if they also had those same subsidies. Thus, they're actually given a competitive advantage over them.
Okay.
Yeah, and the simple way of saying this is that your analogy fails because in one we're describing taxes and the way we spend our budget, and the other you're describing basically an investment exchange between two capital brokers, which is not the same. That's all. It's just
let me make it clear. It's ubiquitous.
Which is why it's a subsidy, by the way. Which is why it is a subsidy.
I just want to add
would
this
tell
one
you
bit.
that liquid capital is not the same thing as
this one bit. It is necessarily.
No, I know it's not.
Yeah, of course
it is
not.
Necessarily.
So
it is necessarily ubiquitous. Oh my god! It is necessarily fucking ubiquitous that basically almost all economists see that a tax cut within a specific industry or in relation to a specific practice is a subsidy.
Yes.
That's why, like most subsidies towards, let's say, fossil fuels are specifically
CNN Business will call that a subsidy. CNN Business will call that a fucking subsidy. Like,
this isn't something about the government or whatnot. This is literally just about like how most economists would actually categorize it, and they will categorize it as a subsidy because taxes are meant to be ubiquitous.
Okay, I mean, you may be right. Sure, why not?
No, yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't. Yeah, we're not going to hammer you too hard.
You could be right, but the
delineation is that your example was, two investors, and I'm giving someone a discount on my labor. That's very different, right, from taxing people and then subsidizing an industry.
Okay, so you could be right. You could be right. Do you also think that it's possible that people may think that a subsidy is literally like people taking money out of their pockets and giving it to other people? Like,
that's also a subsidy.
Okay, so then doesn't it make sense to make a delineation between a subsidy and a tax write-off?
No, because they're both the same type.
But if I need to specify the difference between a
hold on, let me
liquid
put
cash
this another way.
inflow
The
as
reason,
opposed
really
to like
quick,
a tax
I want to
write-off.
clarify the reason, though. Hold on, before you ask this, you can rephrase it. I don't want to cut you off, but I have to clarify something. The reason it's a subsidy is because there's the same economic effect. Okay, that's why. When you do this to an industry, when you take everyone's tax money and you like he perfectly phrased it, Esso, he said, when you cut taxes in a specific industry, first, especially as it relates to specific like production areas, let's say, or certain areas of investment, when you do that, it is called by every left and right, at least in America, let's say, economist, a subsidy. This is a subsidy. So that's all. Like you can ask your question, but the reason is because the economic result is literally the exact same. That's why.
All right. You yeah. I agree with you. And at the same time, right? As a libertarian, I would.
Add this
Can I get a point in
real
really quick?
Zora, you're gonna go right after me because I
No
just
problem.
think that this isn't even a point worth discussing
Yeah,
after
it's a
this.
little-
Necessarily, if there are two businesses that are competing against one another for financial capital, necessarily the business that actually has to pay more in taxes, despite being within the same sphere and same market, is actually subsidizing the one that's basically being
Yes, on a
let's say
technical
given
level,
a tax
yes.
cut. Yes, because their taxes are going towards basically a system in which they are less competitive because they have to pay more into it, whereas the other does not. They are by definition subsidizing the fucking competitor.
On a technical level, now where I'm saying to you that I'm
Before we
granting
even
him.
add to that,
Sorry.
I
Yeah.
wanted to go for a long
So I
time.
just wanted to clarify that is technically, yeah, there's like technically to a discount, yeah, technically on a very technically, like let's say autismo level, yeah, you could say that's a subsidy. Is it typically? Is it in common lexicon? No, not really. But yeah, yes, any form of this is a sub. You're subsidizing. Look up the word.
To make a point.
All right. So can I say my statement before I get
No, because
bulldozed
I've been
again?
trying to talk for the better part of like 10
Okay,
minutes.
go ahead. Let's get a sixth person in there. Go ahead.
No, because I'm trying to answer your original point first. When you originally said that that a person born into squalor will stay in squalor, when I contended to that statement, that a person
The
who is
chances. The chances.
yeah, no,
Big
no,
difference.
no. But here's the problem. My contention to you is not the chances. It was the contention of what the squalor was. I made an argument saying that a person born in an immoral household will not stay immoral and is bigoted to assume that kind of thing. You went and immediately assumed I was in poverty and poverty equals poverty. You dodged the question by stating, in fact, that a person in squalor will remain in squalor by chance. I'm stating that a person who comes from an immoral household is not intrinsically, and that shouldn't be inherently connected to whether or not what their race is.
Yeah, it's not their race, no. Yeah.
No, it's not. And I think that is inherently an evidence of the bigotedness that I think you're. And I want to make an argument here, if we're going to try and make policy out of this, that if you use policy, if you try to create policy with this kind of frame in mind, you will inherently create some sort of bigoted policy. Actually, I don't even think it would pass constitutional muster in some situations.
If it was true enough to be the truth, then Thomas Sowell wouldn't be a guy. Like I don't want to get into it, but there's like too many rebuttals that are very clear and present to this type of logic. It's ironic that you're the one who winds up espousing it when you were the one who kind of posited the, like say, the anterior. It's interesting because it requires it. Your viewpoints require that.
The government. Okay, a libertarian. Please let me finish. Please let me say. Okay, so a libertarian wants to give less taxes to the government.
Yes.
So when I say that you give people a subsidy in the form of tax write-offs, I don't see that as a competition increase. I see that as giving government less power.
It literally is a competition. Okay, dude, you have no.
You're
reason-
actually giving them the power of competition.
Let me
sure.
just put it like this. Just put it like this. One business has a profit of 1,000, then they have to send $200 to a fucking, like, let's say, government for taxes. Then another business has to has a profit of $1,000 and then it has to send only $100 to the government for taxes. When you have what's left over, one has 900, the other has 800. The latter literally has fucking more money to spend in reinvestment or basically dividends or so on, that makes it more fucking financially competitive.
Well, here's the thing.
So what is preventing?
I want to add something to
I
Esoteric's point.
just want to finish this. Every economist would agree with this. The vast majority of economists agree with this. I doubt you can name me a single fucking economic theorem that people actually subscribe to that would deny this fact. So why are you even trying to argue like this isn't a competitive advantage held when it isn't a ubiquitous tax?
And further to his point, you can't even really argue really quick. And if your rebuttal was, can I?
If I just want to fucking respond
with you. Okay.
But I can't have 6 people and then I get to respond for 5 seconds. It's not fair.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Take the floor. Take the floor. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Okay. When you give people tax write-offs, right? This gives that person a competitive advantage. Yes, correct. Also, this would then incentivize other companies to behave in the same way. It basically is trying to affirm a type of behavior without actually revoking people's autonomy or forcing people to do a specific thing.
You literally are by making sure that they can't act.
How is a tax write-off? It's just an additional benefit.
Right. First amender, I'm literally telling you, because you are, first of all, if it's a benefit in a competitive market, it is necessarily a negative to those who they compete against. By definition, this is
no, it's not. Do you know why? Because the other company can desire to also hire the same people. That's it.
Yeah, but First Amendment.
Muted. I'm muted again.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, dude.
Go ahead, because you can't fucking say 5 fucking things.
So do you really want to like just be left? Because constantly, whenever someone is responding to you, you interject, and that's perfectly fine. But to a limited degree, you have to stop. Okay? I waited until you were done, and I understand RV is also interjecting a bit, but when he interjects, you get to finish off, and I don't mute you for his favor. The entire thing is that necessarily, when this occurs, even though you're saying they have the ability to pursue the same benefit, you're actually creating an environment in which they have to deal with an unforeseen externality imposed by the government that enforces a fucking behavior that they would not them in themselves fucking act out if they did not have that externality. It is just as much as a benefit as much as it is a negative towards those who actually do not pursue it. You are just basically saying I am perfectly fine with penalizing companies who do not act the way I want them to act. Just say that, and it would be so much easier, and maybe we'll have to like take off the bullshit tag of libertarian, but we could at least pursue a more honest discussion if you simply did that.
Okay, can I respond? Okay, if it were a literal cash infusion, I 100% agree with you, okay? I don't think that should ever happen, okay? But we do not revoke any autonomy by taking money away from the government and giving it back to corporation.
Did you just hear yourself?
Yeah.
We do not revoke any autonomy within a competitive market by taking money from the government and giving it back to the corporation. That's what you just said.
100%.
Okay. If it's a competitive, let me just do this. Where does the government get money?
There's always like competitive advantage. That's literally what capitalism is.
Where does the government get money?
From people and companies.
Cool. So someone has to pay into the government, right?
Correct.
So when the government is giving back to a corporation, right? Like you just put it in your own words, that is necessarily taking taxes out of their competitor's pocket and putting it in their pocket.
Wait, how does it give it into the competitor's pocket if it's just giving the money back to the people who paid for it originally?
As well.
Like, is this guy like literally just this fucking low? Okay. Do you not understand that if government money is being given, by your own words, that's what you said, if government money is being given...
it is a tax write-off. That's the difference. This is why I made a delineation between a tax write-off and liquid cash.
Okay, First Amender. So let's just put it like this. What you just said a minute ago, you're just wrong. You simply
Okay.
used the wrong terminology.
It's
so
not
let me correct
mutually
you.
exclusive. It can be cash payment or tax.
It
No,
doesn't
no, no, no.
That's
Here's the
where I'm
thing. I want it to be exclusive to to no cash, no
respond
no
to that. It's
subsidy.
irrelevant.
The only thing is a tax write-off. That's it.
Okay. Don't respond to that. It's entirely
Oh
irrelevant.
my God, I'm fucking
entire
muted again. Oh God.
Dude, you need to calm down. Like you're homosexual.
Sorry, I thought I was muted, so I was raging a little bit.
The entire thing is that necessarily you don't have to respond to every interjection. I'm the one talking, and I don't really want to be interjected. And I just
Yeah,
basically
it just
did it to
doesn't
you
feel
because
fair if I have like a mod who's
because
like
you
literally
go
on my back and silencing and gagging me
I'm
every time I
not
want to say something.
silencing you. The entire thing is that when I'm talking, I don't want to be interjected. And that guy interjected, and that's simply I just muted you first because you were the one talking at the time. That's it.
Yeah,
The
okay, so
entire
like
thing,
if I want to retort and say something,
you don't
what?
retort to the interjection while I'm
Yes, I
talking. It's that
do.
simple.
Yes,
Dude,
I am.
This guy is like, okay. So let's reword what you said.
I'm sorry.
Necessarily,
Are you
when you're
guys? Sorry, never mind.
necessarily you're taking taxes in, right? Now, someone needs to pay less taxes despite existing in the same competitive market, right? That means they have more of their income in proportion to what they're actually generating in profit and revenue
Uh-huh.
to reinvest in their company or basically give dividends to be more competitive on the stock market. This is a competitive advantage that's necessarily a negative stimulus to their competitors because they have an advantage in competing against their competitors because they have more cash.
Okay.
Okay? We all agree on that. Now the point here is whether it's a rejection of autonomy. Well, necessarily they have to take an externality. Every business that chooses not to act out how you choose to make them act out needs to take on an externality within their profit to actually maintain basically, let's say, a level of competition. And if they don't actually deal with that externality, if they don't actually basically submit themselves to it, then they are basically losing out on how they would have acted and basically are being penalized for what they would have done if basically the externality was not put forward.
Yeah, and man, I think
Okay,
you should check
please.
out Fusionism.
Can I please?
That's what I think.
Can I
Yeah,
please?
go ahead.
So like, any amount of money that a libertarian can take out of government, they absolutely 100% will go towards it. Okay. Additionally, this is why I specifically mentioned tax write-offs and not an actual subsidy in the sense of taking money from other people to then give it to minorities. That's not what I said. When I say a tax write-off, I understand that it gives competition an unfair advantage. Well, guess what? You are now arguing an opportunity of outcome, not of opportunity of an equality of opportunity, not an opportunity of outcome. You're basically arguing an opportunity of outcome at that point because you're saying that companies should have to play on a fair field, which they literally don't, and nor they shouldn't. However, they should start on equal ground.
Dude, if it's a barrier to entry or something like, let's say, an externality in the form of taxation, the reason why you want a ubiquitous is because it necessarily is equality of opportunity. Like, you don't have a clue as to what you're talking about here. Let's make it simple. Can you find one actual credential economist that would support your view and that basically a non-ubiquitous tax break is necessarily not like a fucking competitive advantage that actually is a negative externality towards those who don't actually fucking submit to it? You find one?
I mean, I would say that there is a negative externality, sure. Yeah, why not?
Then you were just saying there wasn't a negative externality, and now you're saying there's a negative externality.
No.
Just put it forward. Just put it forward. Like, for example, I can say when it comes to the industry of fucking like energy production, I am perfectly fine with adding a carbon tax because I want fucking energy producers to act in a way that I consider more ecologically friendly. I am perfectly fine with saying that this is an externality.
You make a
that I wanna
tax.
put
You
forward.
basically give people a tax
this
write-off.
is Sure, but I am perfectly fine with saying this is necessarily impeding those who actually wish to continue fucking producing energy with fossil fuels. That's perfectly understandable. It's fine, and there's nothing controversial to say about it. You necessarily can't, for some reason, omit the same when it comes to your specific standards on minority employment.
Wait, what?
Dude,
No,
you gotta be...
No, I literally lost it.
Okay, so when I am talking about the energy production sector, When I say I want to impose a carbon tax, I am admitting to the fact that I want to put a negative externality and impede the competitive capabilities of businesses that produce energy and utilize things such as fossil fuels or
Did I say
whatever.
anything about a
Don't get me-
tax?
Literally, when you actually, okay, they work the same.
A tax write-off works the
Yes.
same as a tax.
A
One of them
tax
is literally
write-off.
the opposite of the other.
Dude, when it comes to basically what actually affects your bottom line in terms of how much profit you get to take home, yes, a tax write-off is necessarily the same as basically an added tax, in that not the amount that they are affecting, one adds and one takes away, but in the fact that they have an effect on the fucking competitive nature of the market.
Okay, so I would say that you are right, but then that would also say that there is no inherent value to like immediate liquid capital as opposed to getting like your tax write-off at the end of the year. Like you would obviously, like let's say you have two different customers, right? And let's say that they're the exact same as far as like how they are. Maybe they're like just two hospitals, and one of them says that they're a net 60, they're known for paying their bills, and the other one says that they're a net 120 and they're known for paying their bills. If you had to pick one of these, obviously you would probably pick the net 60. If you would pick the net 60, there's obviously an inherent value to having your liquid capital right away. So like having like taking physical money out of people is completely different from just like a tax write-off, right?
The entire thing is no, it doesn't negate the fact of basically liquid capital because both of them are just affecting the same profit lines. The distinction between liquid capital is the level of fluidity it has in relation to basically how it affects the income tax bracket, which is done either quarterly or.
Yeah.
So it isn't. It doesn't.
So
It's
you
not
basically
admitting that
take
it's
the
different.
money out of government and you
First
give it back to
Amendment.
people.
No, you're contradicting yourself again.
No, I'm not.
Okay. If someone is making a tax write-off, are they taking money from the government?
That's to say that it was the government's to begin with.
Then they're not doing that.
As a libertarian, I'm against that.
Okay, so
It was their money. It was their
First
money to
Amender.
begin with.
So you
They earned it.
Amazing.
How
So
do you?
admit. Alright, let's just get it clear. So you admit that they aren't taking money out of the government, right?
Because the government, it doesn't belong to the government.
Yeah, it doesn't
so
belong
he,
to the government.
So that's it. He keeps saying that they're taking money out of the government, but they're not taking money out of the government. I'm
But
just
they
saying,
are. Wait, wait. Hold on. No, hold on.
You're talking about your tax write-off. Does your tax write-off, Bird, Stone, does your tax write-off necessarily take money out of the government? Yes or no?
Yeah, like I guess in the sense that like it's the
You gotta be
government's.
fucking kidding me.
Wait, what the fuck? Did someone just say yes in the like with my voice? What the fuck?
No, I'm stating. Look,
Yes.
you know what? Let's do it this way. Because the problem is, if you're just going to argue, he's not going to budge on you. If you're going to answer him, just answer him on the methodology. Like,
Yeah, but this is,
he won't budge on the
I can
fucking-
understand the
Yeah.
complexity of this question. For example, you have not physically paid the tax yet, but if you had paid the tax, the government would give you a rebate. They would pay you back. So it would be like the government paying you back. Therefore, you're taking.
No.
tax
That's
from the
not what a
government.
tax write-off is. Okay, when a government
Hold
comes to you and says to you that you owe $1,000, right? What you generally do is that you have like either you or an accountant will get in there and that you will start to say things. Okay, what are some expenditures that are made to you by by your business? Like for example, did you buy paper? Do you need a car? Is there a depreciation expense on the car? Is there gas that you had to pay going to clients? Is there like these are all basically what's called a deduction, and you make these deductions to people, right? And so then at that point, instead of owing $1,000 with all of your deductions, you owe $300 to the government, and you show them your paperwork, and then they say, yep, that looks good. They give a check, and then They take their $300 as opposed to $1,000. Now, a tax write-off is where you give them that same exact ability. You basically have that deduction. Okay, you can mark it off on your ledger that, okay, you do not have to pay this amount of taxes because you are doing this thing that the government likes you doing. So this doesn't revoke in people's autonomy, it increases people's autonomy.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Wait, esoteric, may I?
About semantics. Let me finish, please. Let me respond to him. So, your example is that the $1,000 that you owe becomes $300 because of all of these deductions and costs that you could prove. And the government says, for example, okay, we'll deduct $700 as a tax write-off. Those two would be almost equal. However, the issue is physically. So physically, the government isn't actually giving you any taxpayers' money.
No, that's not
Exactly.
You could argue
Exactly.
that figuratively.
Oh, it
Let me
isn't.
finish. You could argue that figuratively, you're paying the government the tax, and then they're giving you the amount back, such that you're the only amount that you've paid them in the end is you having 300 left over, whatever that results in.
My
Okay,
problem is
no,
that-
can I just say this?
Yeah,
The
go for it.
problem is there's two of them, right? One is basically what seems to be mistaken words that are coming out of First Amenders' mouth that seems self-contradictory, and that's one issue. And that's basically fine. I can move past that because every now and then people fuck up, and maybe he's just using, like, let's say, the government giving money back to the person who earned it, and like using this to refer to his own policy of tax write-offs. And I'm saying no, that isn't the case by your own understanding of it. And like whatever, I don't care. We can go past that. The second thing is basically his initial point that somehow this is tantamount to giving, let's say, a liquid injection, that somehow my point of basically having an added tax is tantamount to giving a liquid injection. And I'm saying no, because a tax write-off and basically a tax, a fucking new tax, like an externality tax, necessarily occurs on the same quarterly or annual period. So it's not in any way tantamount to a liquid injection. They're tantamount to one another and how they affect the competitive market.
I think there's an argument about subjectivity, and so many debates on here just descend
No,
into
Bert, you don't know.
no,
Like,
not subjectivity, semantics. So many arguments on here just descend into arguments about semantics.
okay, Bert, you're trolling. Like, this is a very simple point. For example, let's say I tax like a flat 1,000 rate, right? I tax a flat 1,000 rate for basically those who have a carbon output. Amazing. Now, basically, instead of doing that, I just instead basically have like a tax, not deduction, a tax write-off of $1,000 for those who don't fucking do carbon. They're necessarily the same on the effect that they have on basically the market.
Yeah, but the problem is, though, is that we're not necessarily basing it off action. It's based off the race of the people that you currently hire. You're going to end up, inherently speaking, sparking more racist policy.
I mean, we already know that diversity, like forced diversity in businesses don't work. I mean, there was...
Not forced, it's encouraged.
Yes,
It
it is.
is
Hold
forced
on,
diversity.
hold
You're
on.
incentivizing
Can I finish speaking? Holy shit.
I mean,
No, because you're misrepresenting
Yeah,
the
I'm
argument.
going to finish talking because I was talking, and I'm going to finish what I was going to say. Like,
But you're misrepresenting somebody's argument.
I'm
You
not
can't just-
misrepresenting.
Holy hell.
I'm making my own argument.
So, alright, the entire thing is that
I'm going to finish speaking because I was talking. For God's sake. Anyways, what I'm saying is that we already know that
What are you saying?
write-offs for companies are already, we know this to be bad. When you force integrate people, right? Because it's not diversity that makes companies better, it's inclusion that makes companies better. We know that segregation increases within these companies. Segregation increases whether it's a new firm or even a larger firm. In fact, we have more segregation now in businesses than we did in the 70s.
Okay, how does offering a tax write-off force anybody?
It's not.
Because
It's
you're
encouraged. It's
You're
encouraged.
forcing. Okay, hold on. No, you're forcing these companies or the people there to work with people they necessarily would never have a social group with in the first place, right? So what happens is you say, oh, I'm going to give you a tax write-off if you hire these people. New firms.
Do you
very
think
new
that it's
firms,
possible that
I'm
a firm
not
can choose to not do that?
If
AKA
they're
not
of course
force?
going to do it either way. Like, hold on, let me finish. Like, you're misunderstanding.
Encouraged.
If you
It's
let me
encouraged.
finish
holy hell, let's just let that thing finish.
for the company to do it, So the company itself is being encouraged to hire these people, and they're forcing these people to work with others that would naturally not be in their normal social group, right? So these people naturally don't really like want to be around these people, so they segregate within the workplace. They treat these people different. Or you can see things falling apart, like a lot of firms actually end up going bankrupt, and one of the reasons is because people start working worse when they're forced to be with people they don't normally socialize with.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Okay,
Do
wait
you
a
think that
goddamn
people
second.
of opposite races can't socialize together?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that it's not necessarily. Hold on.
It's
Hold
not
on.
what.
Dude, let's not even go down this fucking, like, the entire thing. Yo, I'm gonna continue on, and I don't care who complains. The fact of the matter is that when it comes to basically the word force, which is what most of you are even arguing over, it is in the same way that if someone litters, they're fucking paid a fine, and that policy is meant to encourage the, like, fucking ending of littering, or basically force people to stop littering. Whatever terminology you use is fucking irrelevant. We can just put it on, like, let's say a client relationship of force to encourage, and wherever you choose to draw the line, it's perfectly fine. But the point is that there's an added externality being put forward that negatively affects those who actually choose not to fucking submit to that. That's it. That's simply the point being.
Wait, hold on. How is it a negative externality?
This was already explained to you.
Okay, it's not a negative externality because they themselves can also participate into it, and if they don't, they actually do not incur any additional losses other than just the tax write-off not being applied. That's all it does.
It's literally like extra credit, dude. It's not harming anybody.
This entire thing. Okay, wait. Let me just respond to Ferran right here. Anime character. You do understand that extra credit is not in a competitive relationship with one another, right? So you don't have to fucking compete against other people within your fucking student classroom for good grades. In comparison, this is a market, and markets are finite, and there is basically fucking fluid capital that is finite, and you want to get the most of it that you can. And if someone has benefits over you, they can get more of a fucking share of that pie of fluid fucking capital than you can. And that is a negative externality imposed upon you.
Giving money back to companies, giving money back to companies does not inherently mean that, like just because a company has a negative, has a competitive advantage, does not mean that you're revoking people's autonomy as a result. That is literally an equality of outcome type of argument, which is, if I had to guess, I'm pretty much sure that you're against, right?
Why do you not understand that it's manipulating people's behavior? I would like to interject. Please.
Not.
Look,
it's encouraging
We're gonna let
a
Bird
better
fucking
behavior.
finish his sentence, okay?
Look, all companies try to maximize profit. If they get any opportunity to do so, they will do so. Otherwise, it's a dereliction of duty to their shareholders. So they will definitely pursue this. Secondly, if you think of this as, let's say, a video game or a simulation where there's three competitors, all have equal funding, all have everything equal. If one of them suddenly does not follow the government's policy of diversity, they suddenly don't get this tax break.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
now that company has a disadvantage. In order for everything
Yeah,
to stay
they're
equal,
not intended to be with an advantage.
Let me
Companies
finish my
have plenty and plenty of advantages over one another,
We're gonna let
which is
Bird
perfectly
finish
fine.
First Amender, you're constantly interjecting.
if one of these competitors takes the company's offer and hires a diverse group of people, therefore
Can we get a mute on
all the
Birds,
other
please?
companies,
Quick mute.
all the other companies have to now follow suit. Otherwise, it's not equal anymore.
Can we get a mute on Mirage?
Change.
Yeah, like
Safety
unironically for trolling. What the fuck?
Can we get a mute on Binary?
So what's gonna happen is First Amender is gonna respond, since it seems like fucking Birds is done talking, and then we're gonna have Zora talk after that.
Thank you, moderator.
Uh,
Thank you.
Okay, so because you provide a tax write-off, yes, it does provide a competitive advantage, right? Okay, so, but we understand that we are not equality of outcome type of people, right? We are equality of opportunity. So you can have policies that fight against the market in the sense that where you like, let's say, have a maybe
Nigger,
not a
nigger,
tax,
nigger,
maybe
nigger, nigger, nigger,
Jesus,
nigger,
dude.
nigger,
Fuck.
Please mute him. Mute them. Mute them now. No, mute them.
Based. Based.
Really quick, has anyone actually invoked the technical definition for subsidy?
Okay, so-
because if you look at it, it does say tax benefit.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you
anything
could,
that you
yeah,
could
okay,
categorize
so I
as a
can
tax
concede,
benefit
I can
is technically a
concede,
subsidy.
I can concede that it is a subsidy, but I'm being very specific on what I mean by a subsidy in the sense of a tax write-off. I am not okay with taking money from other people. That is something that is effectively what I would consider something that fights against the market. I go for things that actually work with the market, and this is a policy that does work with the market in that if anybody who wants to participate in it receives this tax write-off.
It contradicts exactly what you just said. Because
No,
it
it doesn't.
Equal opportunity of outcome.
It gives money back to people, and therefore is
Yeah,
not.
why though? Why?
Huh?
Why?
Because
What
they
do they do
hire
to get
because
that
they
money
hire people who are technically subjugated
Okay,
as
so
of right
the
now.
So is this?
So here's
So is
what's
that
happening.
equal?
Here's what's happening.
Equal
So the
access to
government
opportunity?
is letting you
Things
have.
are already not
Safety?
Stop.
Do you
The
want to not
government
talk
is
over me? Safety?
just based.
We're gonna let Based finish what he's saying, and then we're gonna let Safety go on.
Wait,
Can I
what?
respond to base?
Wait, what
For
the?
whoever
Stop.
said-
Hold on. Hold on.
Actually, hold up. My bad. We're gonna let Based go, then Zord, then fucking Safety.
Fuck you.
And then we're
Safety.
gonna let Forest Patrol.
Okay, sure.
By definition, this isn't equal access to opportunity because you're giving preferential treatment to certain people in order to gain tax breaks.
I need
That's by
that money.
definition not equal opportunity.
I'm getting that money though.
Okay, it might be by definition, but you
Wait,
realize that
Zara's
things.
Yo, I said Zord was gonna go.
You're right. Fuck me, dude.
Cool.
You're not a woman, by the way. I'm sorry.
I have a let people speak for Lord knows.
Why do I got like this person lowered down?
Yo, is Zord even there?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Maybe the voice was annoying. Or
Broken, chill for a second. I was trying to say something.
Broken isn't doing much. He's slightly talking in the background. It's irrelevant. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
punish him.
So, just to
Thanks,
keep
man.
in mind
Appreciate it.
when we're actually having these kinds of conversations, I think, and again, First Amender nor Fermi or whoever the hell else is, we can talk about the semantics of the actual policy itself, but I think it's the attitudinal inherencies that are at large when these two are announcing these policies that nobody wants to seem to actually address. And the problem is, I think that's probably the most, because even if they won't agree with the nature, we need to understand that the attitudes that inform them are inherently intellectually dishonest. And if amenders keep ignoring every single fact that it is bigoted to try and promote policies of this manner just because on the basis of race, it is inherently going to be racist. It actually could fail constitutional muster in the.
Okay, so I just wanna
Wait.
before Safety goes on, I just wanna be like this. Actually, you know what, Safety, you should go before I do because
Sure. What I wanted to say was, it's like you seem to have an objection to. I think it was Based who said it, or maybe it was or maybe it was First Amendment. But like these tax write-offs and tax credits aren't supposed to be a level playing field. Like by definition, the way that these are used are supposed to be used to promote good business practices. So for example, if the government wants to promote diversity in the workplace, well, they're going to promote that business practice because in their view, it's a good business practice. I don't necessarily disagree. I think economically it is very advantageous to invite more people of a diverse culture into your workplace, but it's also giving an incentive for businesses to do that. So I don't see anything wrong with this.
So this is fucking wonderful. This is exactly what I meant. Safety just did what I basically was trying to say in my example of basically carbon tax. He is not saying that this is an equitable playing field, that it basically provides equitable opportunity. He is saying, no, we are tilting the fucking scale because we want a specific outcome to be basically like brought to fruition because we desire it. It's that simple. It's that simple. And that is such an honest take. Now, for some reason, First Amender, you seem to want to not basically just accept this fact of life, because you want to hold on to, let's say, the fucking title of libertarian or whatever. It's like, look, I think ultimately this discussion over basically whether it's a negative externality or whatnot, or whether it's basically equal opportunity, I think there's an obvious decider at this point. I say we move on to Czar's topic, which is specifically the morality and the intention of that
Well,
mod
no,
claim.
not the morality. It's not the morality.
I
It's
haven't gotten
the philosophy behind
Okay,
it.
I would like to
Well,
interject.
then before we continue,
think-
Forrest has been trying to say something and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
My bad.
So I harvested a bunch of asparagus today, and I'm eating it raw.
Based.
Kind of walking around eating raw asparagus.
Okay, sorry, Forrest, but like that is important.
I'd like to interject
Yeah,
this.
I'm glad
The
you think so.
libertarian guy will probably agree that if the tax rate was, let's say, 20%, and then suddenly a government came along and said, we're now going to charge everyone 23%, that means 3% extra if you don't have diversity in the workplace in your company, he would say that that's punishing a company for not having diversity in the workplace by adding a 3% tax. But they're doing it the other way around. They're starting at 23% and they're saying we'll reduce it to 20%. What is the difference between those two? I want to hear it from his mouth.
Wait. So, I mean, I guess like I never said that there's like an inherent difference in these things, but the difference is like I guess that you have like people who they would have to pay taxes either by force and then give it to minorities, or you basically offer tax write-offs to have like good behaviors. Like for example, we do this with pollution, where we have like people who pollute a certain amount, we give the or who reduce their pollution a certain amount, we give them tax write-offs in this situation. This is like a good behavior that creates the good outcomes and at the same time does not fight the market and does not reduce people's autonomy.
So you see there's no difference, therefore you're conceding that it is like a punishment.
But wait, it's not a punishment.
But you said that suddenly increasing tax by 3% if you don't do such and such is a punishment.
Yes, that's a punishment.
But you also said that if you start at 23% and you threaten them by saying we're gonna, you incentivize people by saying we're going to reduce the tax to 20%.
Okay.
It's the same as
I think
the
I see what you're
inverse,
saying.
right?
I think I see what you're saying. So let's say that you have a bill collector that comes up to you and says, hi, we are the cable company. Okay. We're getting like an excess inflow of of people wanting cable. If you can remove ESPN from your cable, we're going to reduce your pay, how much you pay, by $10. Was that a threat?
You admitted before that if you
I
start
misunderstood
at 20%,
what you said. I misunderstood
Sorry?
what you said. I misunderstood
Okay,
what you
so
said.
now I need to understand from you why you do not think it's a punishment. Why are those two not the same?
Okay, I just gave you an example, right? Like a cable company coming up to you saying, hey, if you remove ESPN, we're going to reduce your bill by $10 a month.
Would you at the very least
Is that a
consider-
punishment? Would you consider that as a punishment? I
This
guess.
is different though. This
How is
is
it different?
Are people
This is more
service?
like-
Are people a
more
service?
like, hey, if you do what we say, then you can essentially increase your market share of the whole of the industry, which is inherently going to run other people out of business, or at least force them to downsize. Whenever that company is able to offer a better deal and
Okay.
able to
The
hire,
government
like,
does
pay
this
their
all the
employees
time.
more.
Businesses don't go down because they refuse a tax write-off.
Okay, so if you give money to one company, do they not have an advantage? Like, this is all this
Yeah,
boils down to.
lots of
Are you-
companies have lots
okay,
of advantages all the time over one another.
That this isn't the point though, because then they get naturally disadvantaged because their competitors are now advantaged from doing this if they
Yeah,
choose not to do it.
so, like,
That's the
again,
point. It doesn't matter how many advantages they
So
have.
if you're such a libertarian, why do you believe in, like, this is the government entering itself into essentially what's it called, social, it's a type of
The private
social
market.
something or another.
Yeah, because-
basically they're changing the whole dynamics of the world. Like, they're actually getting their fingers, their little tentacles into everything, and saying, "Hey, you have to behave like this in a social. Like it has to be." They're basically doing what's that fucking term?
check.
Something.
Social engineering.
Check.
Yeah, social engineering. They're basically social engineering the country, and you, a libertarian, are like, I don't mind this because I actually like black people.
Okay, look,
Wait a second. It's not about
Mod check.
Check.
Look, I want to
Hey,
run this.
GM.
Wait, there's no
I would
mod.
like to interject, please. Hold on.
What's up,
First
GM?
Amendment.
You can interject my butt in your face, you fucking.
Oh my God, Simeon, get the fuck out of the room.
Oh my God.
See, I told you I wasn't his alt, dude.
Welcome to Dieta University, buddy.
The thing that we need to understand that when we make this argument, it's not whether or not it's like, oh,
Sorry, shut up. Kings are talking.
oh,
Yeah,
kiss
yeah,
my
kings are
fucking
talking.
anus.
Shut up, Czar. Shut up, you fucking nigger lover. Calm down.
Whoa, dude.
Okay.
Who was that?
Yo, Sam, who was that?
I haven't
I
hit
was
your
calling
level.
people
Like, so
DMs. I was calling people
Listen, Ahmad
DMs
is
the other
going to come in
day.
here very soon.
Who is Simeon? Is it Forest Patrol?
Avram.
Look, I'm gonna go next, otherwise you guys are gonna get me.
who is
Shut the
Simeon?
fuck up, man. I'm gonna go next
Avram.
because you're not cool enough. Okay.
Alright, look, I'm actually making a point.
So Czar, you are like some disgusting Latin.
Oh my God.
Alright, thanks.
I brought in the mod, by the way. Okay.
I'd like
Mods.
to,
I love you, mods. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mike with the sniper rifle out the back.
I would like to thank the mod team for this wonderful takedown.
I'd like to thank them so much for the help.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
We got him.
Mods, amazing! Wow, love the mods.
I
love the mods.
I specifically love Simeon's fucking Nietzsche takes, where he goes on a long diatribe about something Nietzsche said and then just starts screaming the N-word.
Problem?
I mean,
He is the real liberated man, by the way. He's the real Ubermensch, by the way. Unlike
this
you.
man is dead, right? Just channel.
Going to cry for the mods, dude. Not really Ubermensch of you, okay?
Oh, that wasn't very Ubermensch.
You wouldn't Ubermensch, come on, dude.
Yeah, you're more like
mods. There's a bad user on here, okay? There's a bad user saying the N-word, guys, okay?
All right, I'm gonna, guys, I'm gonna head out of here, but y'all have a good night, I would say.
No, I won't.
Did y'all have fun? Did y'all have fun?
Just to spite you once.
Look, I'm sorry. I am
First
personally
Amendment,
under like
Okay.
the supreme belief, and I will never get over this, that Simeon is just Sam Hyde. Simeon sounds he acts and sounds like Sam Hyde.
Okay.
Hot takes,
You
everybody.
said the CP and the
Okay. Well,
fucking.
you guys
masturbation
all have a good night, and the video has been posted on my
Sweet dreams,
channel. So
Amender.
if you
Wait,
if
my
you want,
shit
I can
voice is in a video. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I'm a Barbie girl.
Everybody's gonna know.
I stipulated that at the beginning, so.
Shit.
All right, guys. Anyway,
Bernie Sanders has won every county and won the
You guys-
Wisconsin primary.
you guys have a good night. Okay.
You too, remember.
Bye, guys.
But
Bye.
Bernie's gonna get the fucking.
No, I'm just kidding. He got crushed.
Okay, so I feel like they had a really hard time dealing with what I was just saying there, and it just like divulged into like a shit show. But a libertarian inherently wants to get rid of taxation, and if that happens in the form of tax write-offs, then that's perfectly okay. I mean, it is a reasonable step to give less government power and more power to people. And by offering tax write-offs, it could technically be a way that moves the Libertarian Party forward in a reasonable way. And so I do think that there does exist racism, and that there are things that you can do to prevent racism, and the reason why you prevent racism is because it would provide a positive, or not really prevent it in the sense that like you like police people, but instead just like offering like incentive for good behavior, and it would basically make the economy much better, and it would bring a lot new players a lot new customers into the market where normally there wouldn't necessarily be a customer. So I hope you had fun, guys. Y'all have a good night.